I think we are live for our first time using Discord episode. This is episode 49 of Trek Live. Today we're talking about first officers. And Bill, who do we have as a special guest?
We have good friend of the show, Rob Chapman, who has been on with us before and is often in our chat as we're talking about whatever every week. So it's an honor to have you back, Rob. Welcome.
Thanks for having me back. Yeah, yep. Pleasure to be here.
So before we even get started, I just want to give you the floor a little bit. Usually when we have somebody on for the first time, we'll ask how did you become a fan? What's your Star Trek story? Obviously, but you've been here before. We've already covered that, and I know you have. You are the owner, operator, CEO, whatever you want to call yourself, of the very, very successful, very cool Star Trek book club. So why don't you fill us in a little bit on what's been going on? What do you have on deck? What are you guys reading now if you're in the midst of something? And I have a question for you when you're done that I'm curious about. Mm-hmm. So
So it's going really well. The Trek Book Club on Twitter. So we've read, I think, 8 books now.
Yeah.
We're reading a book a month. So we've covered most of the series. We've done the DS9 relaunch, the start of that with Avatar, the Voyager relaunch series with Homecoming and The Farther Shore. Last month we read Stitch in Time, so the book with it's all about Derek.
Cool.
Really good. And then this month's book club selection, which people voted on and decided on, was the second in the Discovery series, which is called Rest Measures.
Very cool. Very cool.
So, yeah.
So my question is, of the books you've read, what's been the best one from your perspective? What's been your favorite book?
Ooh, that's a tough one. From my perspective, or from the Trek Book Club's perspective?
Both, but I'm more interested in yours.
So the one that I've enjoyed the most, probably a mixture between the DS9 relaunch, the first in the relaunch series, which was Avatar, which was split into 2 books, which takes place immediately after the 7th season in DS9, which was really, really good. I enjoyed that. And the Voyager relaunch book, which was Homecoming, that was really good, which again, like the DS9 one, takes place immediately after the end of season 7 in Voyager, which hopefully I'm not spoiling it for anyone, is when they return to Earth. It's for when Voyager are on Earth and what's happening to the crew. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Awesome. That doesn't surprise me. They're both really interesting, and I still hope to participate actively at some point in the future. I've been busy with a lot of juggling. I'm definitely looking forward to doing that in the near future. But those are 2 books that I was very eager to. I wanted to jump in and wanted to do it. I just wasn't able to get it done in time. So, great to hear it, and I love following what you guys are doing, and I love that you do it. It's a cool thing. It's different, and congrats on all the success with it so far.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been really good. I'm really enjoying it. As someone who's never really read any of the books, it's a lot of fun to, rather than just doing it on my own, to do it with a whole group of people. So it's been fun.
Cool. So one thing we usually start with real quick. Don't want to go into a ton of detail with it, but we always kind of talk about what we've been watching lately. And Rob, I don't know, are you in the midst of like an active rewatch right now? Or are you watching anything specifically? And if not, what have you watched recently that has kind of stood out to you?
I'm almost at the end of a TNG rewatch.
Cool.
So I haven't done that in a long time. So I literally last week finished season 6.
Very nice. Cool.
Which was good. Not as good as some of the other seasons I've seen, but really good. There was quite a few episodes. I recently tweeted some of the episodes that stood out for me.
That's right. Yeah. Very cool.
But yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Awesome. And Dan, season 2 of TNG?
Yeah, I haven't been as active. If I can remember correctly, it's episode 10, maybe. It's a Wesley love story episode. Um,
the Dauphin.
yes. I'm terrible with episode names, but a little bit tougher episode to get through. Not a fan of the love story, but yeah, it's Trek.
And that's saying something. You're a hopeless romantic.
Yes,
Usually
I
those
am,
stories.
but that one,
Not so much.
not so much. What about you?
Cool.
How's Enterprise treating you?
Enterprise is treating me well. I finished season 1 last weekend. I am probably going to take this weekend off. Hopefully going to be rolling out episode rankings and Trekkie awards, stuff like that over the course of this weekend, and then diving into season 2 next week. So be on the lookout for hopefully some cool content, some like overall thoughts for the season from my perspective, and see what the Twitter polls shook out as like how those episodes rank according to everybody's votes. So that should all be coming hopefully in the next day or so. That's where I am.
Yeah.
Cool. So our topic for the week, as we've talked about ad nauseum for the last couple of weeks, is Star Trek First Officers. We're going to talk about our favorites. We're each going to kind of go around and pick and defend our choice as our favorite Star Trek First Officer. And then once we all kind of talk about our own picks, we'll go back, and anybody that we haven't talked about, anybody that wasn't chosen, we'll kind of go through and share a few thoughts on each of those characters. Do we like them? Do we not? Where do they kind of fall? If there was like a runner-up, I'd be interested to hear. Yeah, that's the plan. So is everybody prepared to let known their favorite Star Trek First Officer?
I am. I believe. I hope.
It's a tough call.
Yeah.
If you ask me tomorrow, I might have a different answer, but it's one of those. So I'd like to start with you, Rob. Who was your favorite Star Trek First Officer and why?
Well, it was tricky because I went back and forth. I pretty much narrowed it down to 2. I could have picked either of them as my favorite First Officer. But so yeah, the 2 I had the dilemma with choosing between were Kira and Saru. But then after weighing it up, I thought that I haven't really seen that much of Saru. There's only been 1 season of Discovery so far. As well, we had 7 seasons of Kira, so I thought really it's not really fair to compare. Well, in my mind, so I went with Kira Nerys as my favourite First Officer. For the moment, anyway. But like you said, it could quite easily change on another day when you ask me. But yeah, I ended with Kira as my choice.
It's a great choice. Great choice.
And what about Kira stands out to you? Like, is there something about the character that?
Yeah. There's loads of reasons. She's just
naturally.
She's such a strong female, role model.
Yeah.
But it sounds a bit cheesy, but if I was to have a daughter, that's who I'd want her to look up to in order to stop it. That's the person. She's strong, she's brave, she's powerful, she's independent, but also at the same time she's compassionate and caring. She's not afraid to stand up for herself or her people, whether it's to enemies like the Cardassians, the Dominion, or even potential friends that she thinks might be, like that Federation. I like that bit in the pilot episode Emissary, where she's initially quite hostile to Cisco and she's quite frosty. So yeah, I admire that part of her, the strong female role model, and also she's not afraid to get her hands dirty. And again, in the Emissary episode, I think we see her, helping clear up the promenade. She's not above her station. She's willing to get her hands dirty and muck in. I also really appreciate the fact that she's got this fighting spirit. She's really determined and fierce. So we see her as a resistance fighter during the occupation. So she's proudly defending her people against the Cardassians. She fights to free them from the occupation. And also she's in the Dominion War. She's a major figure in that.
Yeah, definitely.
the resistance on DS9 to try and get back DS9 from the Dominion.
Yeah.
And she assists and effectively co-leads the Cardassian resistance against the Dominion. I mean, really, without her, it wouldn't have really gone anywhere.
Right.
So, and also, actually going back, thinking of when the Klingons attack DS9. I think I can't remember, season 3 or 4.
4, yeah. Way of the Warrior.
Thinking about the fighter in her, we see her in the thick of fighting with the Klingons, holding her own. I mean, admittedly, she does get stabbed.
She does get stabbed.
Just gonna say,
but she kicks butt all the way up to that moment.
Really does. I mean, really, other than there's only a handful of female figures in Star Trek that I can think actually I'd be terrified to fight. And Kira's one of them. You got Dax as well. But yeah, so she's a fighter, and I like her that kind and compassionate side of Kira, which initially she can come off a bit frosty and a bit cold at times, but I think actually she's a really compassionate character. So she, when I can't remember the name of the episode, but when she's, I think Keiko is injured on a runabout, and when she's pregnant with the O'Brien's second child, she's selflessly, without hesitation, acts as a surrogate for their baby. Yeah. Even though that's probably a real pain in the backside for her having.
I'm sure.
But she selflessly does that. She acts as a guardian and a friend to Ziol, despite the fact that a lot of Bajoran people probably wouldn't have done that.
That's true.
Not only is she a Cardassian, she's the daughter of the most evil, the worst Cardassian there is, arguably. So yeah, she doesn't hold prejudice or show hatred towards Zial. She's kind to her. She looks out for her when no one else does. Yeah. And also she in a few other episodes like Duet, and again I can't remember the name of the episode, but the one with is it Leggett Gamor, where she's they make her look like a Cardassian. She shows Cardassians in those episodes sympathy and compassion. Again, when many other Bajorans probably wouldn't.
True.
So I like that side of her. She's willing to put herself in the firing line, and she's willing to sacrifice herself for others. So we see in the episode Children of Time. She's more, she's willing to die if it means that the inhabitants of that planet can survive. So she's really brave. Even though I'm not particularly religious, I appreciate the fact that she's really passionate about her beliefs and values.
Right.
Again, she's willing to. Her beliefs are so important to her. She's willing to die for them. In the Reckoning, she allows the prophets to use her as a host to fight the Par Wraith. So I like that side of her, and also her arc, her whole story arc is just is really really good. She starts off as a frosty, rebellious freedom fighter, this terrorist, standing against the world on her own. And then, eventually she becomes part of this crew. She has all these friends, this family, lasting friendships, particularly with people like Dax. We see her helping, along with Sisko and the Federation, to rebuild her world and support it in recovering from the occupation. We see love stories with characters like Bareil and Shakar, and finally Odo. She has really interesting relationships with other characters like Ducotte, Kai Wynn, Odo, Bareil. We see her coping with Dominion occupation on DS9, which is really interesting. And there's the episode I really like her in is when the Dominion have been on the station for quite a long time, and it almost becomes normal.
Yeah,
The Dominion there.
I agree with that.
And
Yeah, that's
Vedic,
a great episode.
there's one of the Vedics, really strongly protests and saying, we need to do something. We need to resist the Dominion. And she's saying basically, there's nothing we can do. And eventually, this Vedic hangs herself in protest against the Dominion, and it kind of makes Kira realize, no, I need to do something. I can't just, be this passive bystander. I need to do whatever I can to stop, to stop the Dominion. So yeah, I really like that side of her coping with the occupation, Dominion occupation. We see her in the Cardassian Resistance with Damar. I really like their relationship and how she assists Cardassia. And then at the end, we see her eventually taking over as commander of the S9. When, again, spoiler alert, when Cisco, well, I say dies, but
something happens to Cisco.
The Cisco.
And we see after finally getting with Odo, we see her saying farewell to him when he rejoins the Great League. So so a huge array of reasons why I like Kira.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, you've go ahead, Dan. What were you gonna say?
Nothing. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say you made a really compelling case, not only why Kira is your choice for best first officer, and certainly I'm sure in all of our conversations for this pick, but she's one of the best characters in Star Trek in general. Like I think when we did way back, I think it was episode 2 of Trek Live, and we picked our favorite this and that, and we did our 3 favorite characters, and I had Kira in my top 3. I think she's as good as they get, for all the reasons you just named. And I was going to ask you for an episode, like a specific episode to kind of sum it up, but you named 12, which kind of cover the whole game.
It's perfect.
You preempted it with a whole lot of examples that cover the gamut, they cover all ends of it. She's such a complicated character and has so much happening, and her in Children of Time is very different than the Kira that you see in Emissary, or the episodes with Vedic Gamora. She covers so many different emotional points of view, and so really good pick.
I think the one that stands out to me, I went back and sorry, I was just going to say the one that stands out to me, I think, is Duet. I went back and watched that several times. She's in our visitor in that episode is the range of emotions and are just amazing. She really nails it in that episode.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Both dealing with the occupation and the Bajorans' feelings about it, and showing the compassion for this innocent Cardassian that couldn't do anything to help Bajorans. So that's the one I'd pick. I think Duet. That's
a good one.
Yeah,
that's a classic episode for sure. Do you have any quick thoughts on Kira, Dan? Without necessarily spoiling the pick?
She is up there for me as far as first officers and characters as well. I think she might have the best story arc of the first officers, I think. T'Pol is up there for me as a story arc, but in all of Star Trek, I think, which is kind of an testament to Deep Space Nine, is her story arc is as good as it gets, I think. So that's what I think of when I think of her and her character. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. I think of her at the beginning of Emissary as this rugged resistance fighter who was fighting the Cardassians, trying to get them off the planet, trying to fight for Bajoran independence. And at the end of the show, she's helping the Cardassians to fight their own resistance. And just the growth that it takes to get to that point is pretty great. And the show does a good job selling it. It's not an out of nowhere twist or an out of nowhere evolution. It's all natural and feels real. So yeah, Kira's a great pick, and Rob, you sold it very, very well.
Yes.
So
good.
well done. Dan, who is your favorite Star Trek First Officer?
My favorite Star Trek First Officer is William T. Riker. Before I kind of talk about why, to me, First Officers kind of have a commonality between all of them. I think when I think of all the First Officers, they're so loyal to their captain, and I think I'm not taking away from any other First Officers, but to me, like a really foundation, like a foundation for Riker is the loyalty part of it. And that's a big thing for me, why I chose that. I know there are a lot of, pretty much all the first officers are very loyal.
Sure.
But the reason why I chose Riker is because I think he, especially the episode that I picked, I think he, in a first officer, you want someone to take over the ship in the highest stakes possible, and that's kind of in the best of both worlds. That's what happens. He takes over in arguably one of the baddest villains out there, the most difficult villain in Star Trek. So I think you got to be cool under pressure, and I think he is, and he's awesome. So that's why he's my favorite. And my episode is Best of Both Worlds, part 1 and 2. Yeah. So I kind of cheated with 2.
Well, I know I love Riker for a lot of and I agree with you. The thing I think about that hand in hand, like undying loyalty to Picard. Like when I think of Riker, I think of like the relationship with Picard and like the yin and yang of that. Like a lot of people talk about the yin and yang of Spock and Kirk, and Riker and Picard kind of have the same kind of deal. Like Riker brings things to the table that Picard's not necessarily comfortable with.
Yes.
Like the joviality, the ability to meld with the crew and be a warm face, and like, but he's all business too. Like he can be, you see him oftentimes like shouting Riker at times.
Yeah.
Or he gets very, he can be very aggressive, but he's also very welcoming and warm. And I think they bring things to the table that the other needs. If that makes sense. And the episode you picked, Best of Both Worlds, is when I think a lot of people, I would assume, when you think of Best of Both Worlds, the easy thing to pop into mind is the Borg and Locutus and Picard being assimilated and all that big stuff. And I think I've talked about before, when I really think about the Best of Both Worlds, I love the Riker dilemma. And the older I get and the more, I get into like, into a career and having to make decisions about what I want to do with my life and do I want to do this or do that. And, Riker's whole dilemma about wanting to, having to balance like long-term career goal and happiness of what he's doing is something that really resonates, I think, with me. And yeah, of course, he, like you said, he's putting command of the ship in like this biggest crisis imaginable.
Yeah.
And comes out smelling like roses and is he's great. And
he to me, he gave up so much because he gave up Troy and a command to be on the Enterprise. So I mean, it makes sacrifices also. So
absolutely, that's true.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on William T. Riker, Rob?
Yeah, great pick. You can't really argue with that.
Yeah.
I listed some things about him as well, and number 2 on my list about him was what you said, the loyalty to Picard. That's what comes to my head immediately, that unwavering loyalty. Interesting. Number 1 on my list was suave and swagger.
He is
stepping over the chair.
Yeah. He is.
Yes.
I think we all wish we could be a little bit like Riker.
Exactly.
I know I do. Absolutely. I wish I could be as cool as William T. Riker. He's a good one. He's definitely right in there with me. A lot of these characters are. I mean, we're going to talk about them all briefly as we kind of wrap up the main brunt of our topic here. But Riker is somebody that I give a lot of thought to. Of all these characters, I think he's the one that I would want to be my first officer. I think if I needed a first officer in reality, if I was a captain of a ship, I think Riker's the one that I like. It's just like a model of the perfect
checks all the boxes.
In that role. Yeah. I would trust him in command. He's good with the crew. He's got a lot of good perspective. I think he's a great character. Frakes is awesome as Riker, as an Visitor is obviously as Kira too. Like the performances behind these characters that have already been named are both top of the line, some of the best that Trek has to offer, I think. So great pick.
Bill, what is your favorite Star Trek first officer?
My choice is I went with Spock, which I struggled a lot with this because to be completely fair, like when I first think of Spock, I don't necessarily always think of him as the first officer. I think of him as the science officer, and I think of him sometimes more in that capacity than the first officer role. But when I really like started thinking about it, everything you said about Riker and his loyalty to Picard is 100% true. But all of that is also there with Spock and Kirk.
Right.
And yeah, big surprise, Grappler. I've said this on. I think just last week when we were talking about TOS, I went on a big tangent about how much I love Spock, and all the reasons that I think he's like the defining character in Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
I've also gone on the record many times saying Picard's my favorite character in all of fiction, anything. But Spock would be like 1A in that conversation. If there wasn't a Picard, it would clearly 100% be Spock. But no, I mean, Spock is similar to Paul, I guess, is juggling two jobs. They're both the science officer and the first officer. Some of these other characters are kind of just the administrator who kind of executes the captain's orders. And like Riker, when I think of Riker's like actual duties, I think of him filling in for Picard. I think of him doing things like crew evaluations and deciding what officer goes where, and
handling the children and
handling the kids, all the stuff Picard doesn't want to deal with. Crew rosters and schedules and stuff like that, which is all really good stuff, and it makes it more real because that's, I think, what would actually have to happen on a ship of that size with that many people and that many moving parts. But Spock is a scientist first and foremost, but is also capable of stepping into the command chair and in situations like in the Doomsday Machine or in countless other episodes where Kirk's off on some planet doing getting himself into trouble. Spock has to step in and take command, and so he's capable of doing that, but he's also the scientist. And the loyalty is the first thing that pops into my head. And when I think of the episode that came to mind when I thought about this is, I know, Rob, I don't know that you've seen all of TOS, so I'm not sure, maybe you haven't seen this episode or not. But the episode is the Enterprise incident from season 3. Mm-hmm. And the reason that episode came to mind for me is that they have to be completely like on the same page in order for them to complete this mission. To give you a little bit of background, Rob, have you seen the Enterprise incident first off?
I haven't, no.
You haven't, no. It's in the 3rd season, which is kind of infamous for not being very good. But this is to me clearly the best episode of that season.
Okay.
They're trying to infiltrate a Romulan ship to steal a cloaking device. Basically, the Starfleet wants to find out what the secret behind Romulan cloaking technology is. And the way that they do it is Kirk has to like. He pretends to have kind of gone off the deep end and randomly flies the ship into Romulan space, knowing that the Romulans are going to be on them like stuff I'm not going to say. But and Spock has to step into command and deal with the Romulan commander and be the diplomat and try to like stall and allow their secret mission to play out. And in order for this to happen, they have to like role play and they have to know exactly what the other's thinking. They have to be on the complete exact same page without being able to say it. They're the only two people in on this mission. The whole crew is kind of like in the dark. It's like a black ops kind of deal where only Kirk and Spock know what's really happening. And Spock is ultimately put in this position where he's dealing with this female Romulan commander who is incredibly charismatic and is almost alluring Spock away from the Enterprise. But Spock has to like pump the brakes and realize where he is, and his loyalty to Kirk and the Enterprise ultimately wins out, obviously. So I think that's a really good episode to kind of demonstrate Spock as a first officer and operating in concert with Kirk, and on an incredibly difficult mission. And to just double back on a lot of the stuff I said last week, Spock to me is the character that kind of defines Star Trek. He's the only one who's in the original pilot going back to 1964. He's all the way through the Kelvin timeline movies, like the Rebirth of Trek. He's in them. He's even a plot point in Beyond after he passed away. After Nimoy passed away, he's no longer even able to do it. But Spock is still like a presence in that movie, and even into Discovery, Spock is still a presence. Like Spock is still like a part of that story. So I think it's whenever I'm put in these positions to like Spock almost always wins out because he's such a huge presence over Trek, and I think that's well earned because of his strength as a character. I think the character's so rich and there's so much to him, and he single-handedly like defined like how Star Trek was going to portray alien species. built a lot of what the Vulcans ended up being. And yeah, I think of episodes like A Mock Time, that really well articulates this dynamic between him and Kirk and McCoy, the loyalty that they all have for each other. And and then of course Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan, his decision to sacrifice himself for the ship. And the what I always think about with that movie and that moment is you can see his thought process just like go in an instant. Like they're in that position, they know they're not going to be able to get out, and see him swivel around in his chair. He looks into like the camera, sees him, and you see like the light bulb go off. He knows what he has to do. Throughout that movie, he's talking about the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and he's going to walk the walk in addition to talking the talk. Like he knows what he has to do, and he just does it without even really hesitating. He gets up out of the chair, and it's like one swift motion. He's in engineering and doing what he's got to do. So all of these things make it almost impossible for me to pick anybody but Spock. So, but I love both of your picks. Like I said, if you asked me tomorrow and I tried to think about it differently and I thought about it from the perspective of who would I want to be my first officer, I'd probably pick Riker. And if I thought about it from the perspective of who's got the best character arc, who's got the most meat on the bone of these characters, I'd probably say Kira. So I think you two picked my
alternates.
My other two. Yes, they're my alternates at this point. So now that we've talked about our favorites, we've talked about Spock, Riker, and Kira. I thought maybe we could spend a couple of minutes, not a whole lot of time necessarily, but some quick thoughts on the characters we didn't name. And by my count, I have Chakotay, T'Pol, and Saru. As Rob, you briefly mentioned, Saru was actually in the running for yours. So we got a little bit of Saru, teeny tiny little bit. But let's start with Chakotay. Rob, when you think of Chakotay, I know he's pretty a lot of mixed feelings out there on Chakotay. What are your impressions?
Yeah, he's a difficult. I love Voyager. Voyager's my favorite, but I think he's a tough one. I mean, I think he's one of the characters that kind of tends to fall into the background. But if I really focus on him, I think of him as being really principled. He's not afraid to stand up to Janeway when he thinks she's wrong. Episodes like Equinox, Scorpion,
great episodes.
He's more than willing to stand up to her and say, no, you're wrong, you're out of order. So that's what I think of when I think of Chakotay, someone who stands his ground, principled, he's his own man, makes his own decisions. That would be my summary of Chakotay.
Daniel?
I am in the same boat with Rob. I love Voyager, probably one of my favorites, but they were kind of talking about this in chat. I think, and I kind of want to stay positive, but Chakotay was definitely underutilized, and I think that there's just a lot of inconsistencies with his character as well. It's tough to just rank him higher than he is, but I do, for reasons that Rob mentioned, I do like him because he isn't afraid to stand up for what he believes in, even when like leaving Starfleet or standing up to his captain or anything. So I think that is a good quality in a first officer. You need to be able to, I guess, go to blows with your captain. So I think that's kind of a cool quality that he has also. So
yeah. When I think of Chakotay, I kind of have to split the show almost in half. Like I think when you watch, and I know Thad, you're on a podcast right now, kind of running through Voyager episode by episode. I think you're in season 1 still. I think Chakotay's more used in the beginning part of the show, particularly in season 2. There's a lot of Chakotay stuff happening in season 2 with Seska, and while some of the Maquis stuff is still, it's certainly not in the forefront as much as I think everybody would like it to be, but it's more present in the early part of the show.
Yeah.
Once Seven comes on board, it kind of redefines the show a little bit, and some of those scenes that Janeway and Chakotay would have, I think, are allocated to like those minutes on screen where Janeway and Chakotay would normally like talk about a mission and talk about the perspectives, Starfleet Maquis. That time is allocated more toward the Janeway 7 humanity, stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
So that I think Chakotay is the character that probably suffered the most as a result of 7 of 9 getting on the show. But the one thing I'll say about Chakotay, and Dan, you've heard me go on this way back in the day, but a lot of this stuff is not as much on screen as I wish it was. But when I think of Chakotay, I think there's more there than people kind of realize. In episodes like Resolutions, which is a Daniel special, one of your favorites.
Yes.
And Scorpion, whenever they're in a position to have to choose whether or not to keep going, to keep pressing, or to potentially turn back and settle and, lay everything down, Chakotay's always erring on the side of, I'm okay with that. Like, he's always kind of okay with the idea of possibly not pressing on. And when I hear that, whenever I hear these discussions in the show, in Scorpion and in Resolutions, I see it because first off, I'm convinced that he's completely in love with Janeway and knows that the only way anything will happen there, they're not on the ship. Like, if they're not doing what they're doing, like,
He's trying to stop the ship.
No, I think he knows.
Saboteur on board.
I think he knows nothing like that's going to happen as long as they're on this mission. But I think he thinks that if they settle, there's a possibility there. And that's evidenced by every time they're in these positions, he's kind of like, well, is settling so bad? In Resolutions, he's totally content to kind of be there and is not worried about, what the ship's doing. He's like, they're going to go, they're going to do their thing. And I also think a big part of that dynamic is that, as somebody who's like the caretaker for the Maquis crew, I think he thinks that those people are in the best positions they've ever been in their lives. And in a lot of ways, maybe getting home might not necessarily be the best thing at this time for those people. Like, they're a lot of those people are troubled and they're renegades, they're wanted, getting back to the Alpha Quadrant right away. Who knows what that's going to look like for him and his group? But he knows that on Voyager they're taken care of. They're living a positive life. They're doing good. It's the best place in life that a lot of these people have evidently been in. So a lot of this stuff is not really on the forefront and being emphasized in the show as much. And that's kind of a bugaboo that a lot of people would have with Voyager, that there's a lot of meat on the bone with this kind of stuff. People wish that a lot of this stuff was more developed, and I agree. But I think it's there. The more I watch Voyager and the more I go back to it, each time I go back to it, I see more of that stuff. And when I think of Chakotay, I think about those kinds of things. And I think there's stuff there to think about. And yeah, so that's my sort of defense of Chakotay. And he's certainly not my favorite. He would be at the bottom of my point if I was ranking these characters. But I don't think he's as malign. I don't malign him as much as many do.
Which is crazy to me because this is kind of just transitioning, but we've only seen one season of Saru, and he's already like up in people's lists.
Yes,
and I think that's kind of a testament to Discovery and everything, and Saru as a character, and so which is cool.
Well, I'm okay skipping just since that's a pretty good segue. Let's talk about Paul to kind of wrap it up.
Okay.
Rob, since especially you kind of indicated at the beginning that Saru was in the conversation for you to choose him as your favorite first officer. Tell us a little bit about why. What about Saru really stood out to you, and why was he so close to being your choice?
I think it was more towards the end of the season.
Sure.
Again, terrible with episode names, but the episode where when the crew had discovered that Lorca was on the moon, and Saru just brings the crew together and inspires them, and that speech he did to the crew is just it made me want to stand up and say, yeah,
let's go.
I'm with you. Yeah, he's really inspirational. I think he's again, his story arc. He's come from the beginning. He's come from. He's quite insecure, nervous, almost like petty character. He's squabbling with Burnham to where we've left him now. He's in command. He's got the confidence of the crew. He's inspiring them. He gets them home. Yeah, so. I felt he was a great character, and in a way, weirdly, he's quite brave in a way because his instinct is because he's this prey species.
Yeah,
he's probably to duck and cover and hide, but he puts himself, he's joined Starfleet, which is incredibly dangerous. All these dangerous missions, so he's kind of brave in a way, facing his fears.
Absolutely. What do you think, Dan? That's right. I know you kind of already you talked about how you're surprised at how loved he is already. Given
I think it's a story. It's a combination. It's like the perfect storm. They have probably the best actor in Hollywood right now to play an alien playing Saru, and just the story arc and the writing is so good with that character. And it was cool because he was kind of underwhelming in the middle of the season, and then he just kind of stepped into the spotlight and just kind of stole the show, and that's what I love about him. Because early Saru is totally different from the end of the first season, so
that's it exactly for me.
Yeah.
Like the arc that we got already in that character is pretty tremendous.
Yeah.
In one season, he's come such a long way. I always talk about in the Vulcan Hello, when at the very beginning of the episode, when Michael Burnham wants to go out and investigate this object that they don't know what it is, and she's arguing with Captain Georgiou about wanting to go, and Georgiou's like, and Saru's saying it's crazy, she shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And Georgiou says, well, you should go too. And Saru's like, no, I'm not going out there. It's dangerous. Like he's completely opposed to putting himself in any kind of danger, and just sees no reason to do it. And the starting point of that to what you see him doing and what's past his prologue, the episode you mentioned, Rob, where he's giving the speech and he's in command in a combat situation, and he's doing all these heroic things. And then kind of in the middle of that, towards the beginning of the show, in Choose Your Pain, he's in command for the first time and is really kind of struggling with it and is totally unsure of himself. He's wanting to, at least at the beginning of the episode, wanting to research what other captains have done and what traits they have. And he's learning about, he sees that list of Pike and Archer and April and Georgiou, and but by the end of that episode, he's like, I don't need that report. I know what I did. There was this a really well conceived, really well defined arc that I think they knew they were going to do, and they executed it really well. And like you said, Dan, I totally agree that that this is an actor who specializes in creating other. He uses his body language and his posture and the way he moves and ticks, and like I said it on Trek Ranks when we talked about Discovery Season 1, and I've said it on here many times, that I think he's the most alien Star Trek character we've ever had. Just everything about him is just not human. The way he walks, the way he moves, just everything he does, the way he speaks, it's all alien, and that's a credit to Doug Jones. And so you have that combined with the story arc that really, really worked, and in a short period of time, they took that character and covered a lot of ground. So he's definitely way up there for me, and one of the reasons I love Discovery as much as I do.
I know that there's the next Discovery book is a Saru-centric book, so you can see what that book's about and see more of Saru. So yeah,
I'm curious. I'm sure you will. I'll be reading it. And I'm very interested to see what kind of development they give in that, because it seems like they're pretty in concert with the novels that are coming out with Discovery. People on the writing staff, Kristen Beyer, who is very involved with pocketbooks and the novels, is obviously on Discovery. So there's more connective tissue between the show and the novels than there's ever been. So it certainly makes the idea of reading those books really attractive. So to just hit on our last character for the day here, T'Pol. Rob, when you think of T'Pol, what comes to mind?
I haven't got a huge amount to say about her, which I'm probably doing her a massive disservice because she is a fantastic character. But immediately I think of her relationship with Trip. That's really a really interesting arc that's developed, a story that's developed. Her loyalty to Archer, and the fact, again, can't remember the episode, but where I think is it like an alternate reality where the Xindi have destroyed, or not destroyed, but I think they have destroyed Earth, and we see T'Pol almost like caring for Archer in the future. I thought that was really, again, we're seeing a kind and compassionate, loyal side to her, that she's, she stays with Archer. I'm sure you guys will have much more to say about her than I do. But But yeah, she's a great stuff.
Cool. What do you think, Dan?
When I first was about to watch the show, I thought Jolene Blaylock was just gonna be another pretty face to kind of draw in fans, but I was kind of the opposite because I really like the banter early on with a lot of the characters, and that I feel like the humans and Vulcans are really standoffish with each other, and I think she's really brave to step in and be on the first, Earth ship to go out, and I really admire that in her and a character, and I like, yeah, just the relationships she grows with the characters and the captain. So
yeah, I agree with you, Rob. Too. The Trip relationship certainly comes quickly to mind. The other thing that I always think about with Paul that I've never forgotten, I heard on a long time ago, Chris Jones on Warp 5 on Trek FM, who's a big time hero I know of Dan and I's. I'm sure, Rob, you're well aware of his success with creating Trek FM. He was back in the day when he was one of the hosts of Warp 5. I remember talked about to Paul in through the lens of, he's an American, born in the United States, living in Japan, and what I remember him talking about. He would talk about the way he would relate to T'Pol was this slow assimilation in another culture that he personally experienced going to Japan, just kind of unconsciously, just sort of becoming Japanese. And growing to love that culture and to treat it as if it's his own. And that's kind of what we see happen to T'Pol. It's very gradual. It's very quietly done. Her loyalty to Archer is very slowly built up over the course of the first season into the second season. And her relationship with Trip is kind of slowly rolled out. And there are breadcrumbs early on, and it slowly is built up. I think she's very underrated in the gradual, slow burn character development that some of these other characters are really kind of known for. I think Paul, whenever I watch Enterprise, and I'm doing it right now, when my default answer when I'm asked who's your favorite character in Enterprise is always Trip. But when I'm watching Enterprise, I'm often it might be T'Pol. T'Pol's slow character development and the constant evolution she's going through is something that really brings me back. She goes through a lot. Yeah.
The Trillium, and then the whole culture change with her people, and also assimilating into this new position on the ship, and it's crazy.
She's put in this position at the end of season 2 with having to choose to walk the line with the Vulcans and say they try to pull the ship, they don't want her going into the Delphic Expanse, and that's her big linchpin moment where she's got to pick, am I a part of this crew, or am I kind of on borrowed time, just kind of observing and trying to push them along, and I'm really a Vulcan officer. And she chooses she's with Archer and company. And I think that's well sold over the previous 2 years. That slow burn. She's been through a lot, and Archer's been there for her on lots of occasions. And I think she sees that and has developed that loyalty and relationship. But not just with her, with the other people on the ship too. I think her appreciation for humanity as a whole is what it really is about. So I like T'Pol a lot. I think of episodes like Twilight and like I said, The Expanse, where she's really confronted with this relationship with humanity and Archer specifically, as really strong points for her. Yeah.
Yep.
So real quick, you've kind of already said it, Rob. Saru. Dan, who was your second choice? If you couldn't pick Riker, who would have been your pick? Spock would have been your pick. Yeah. And I probably would have been Kira, because I had Kira in my top 3 Star Trek characters along with Spock. So that was and Riker would have been my 3. So I feel like we touched on a lot of ground here. And in a roundabout way. So the one thing that we always kind of end on here before completely is, has anybody listened to any good podcasts, Star Trek podcasts in the last week, 2 weeks? Anything really stand out, Rob? Anything you want to throw out there?
I listened to Primitive Culture for the first time.
Ah, cool.
Yes.
That's such a good show.
Yeah, I can't believe I haven't got into it sooner. I'm a bit of a history buff. I did my undergraduate degree. So the episode that I watched was all about refugees and authoritarian regimes, and they particularly focused on the Voyager episode Counterpoint and how it relates to the story of Anne Frank.
Right.
And it was really, really interesting. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Really
cool.
strong. So I'm definitely going to carry on, go back and watch previous episodes of Primitive Culture and carry on listening in the future. And also the Tricorder Transmissions latest podcast, Trek Profiles.
Yes.
Which
It's a good show.
which is a brilliant idea for a podcast. I'm really jealous I didn't think of it first. Because it's even that it is all about Star Trek, but it's focused on the fans and exploring a different, talking to a different fan each episode. And that's a really big part of Star Trek for me. It's the connection with fans. So it's really interesting to hear other people's stories about Star Trek and what they like, what they don't like. So
absolutely.
I've been listening to that as well.
Yeah. I was in love with that idea the minute I heard it. As soon as I saw it coming out, I was like, that's so cool. I wish we would have. So, yeah, couldn't set it better myself. So really good stuff. Dan, what about you?
I listened to Delta Flyer. That's podcast. He is in chat right now. Great episode. They're going through Voyager. Big Voyager fangirl. So they talked about Heroes and Demons, and the reason why I liked it so much is because they had special guests on, and the guests hadn't seen Voyager before, so you got this great fresh perspective of the episode and in Voyager. So it's a great episode, and I definitely recommend listening.
Yeah, I think that was Haley who I think she was.
I think it was.
Yeah.
She was also on Trek Profiles, I think, as well.
Yeah, so she's in the spotlight right now.
Yeah.
She's
She's
all over the place. So yeah, I've had a really busy week, so I haven't listened to a whole lot. I did FM interview with Dwight Schultz that Thad mentioned. That was really good, and I did listen to Trek Profiles. That was really good, and I'm working on you, Thad. I'm subscribed. I'm a little backed up, and my goal is to get caught up here pretty soon on yours. And the latest Trek Ranks is a episode on best battle scenes, and I have not listened to that yet.
Great episode! Great episode!
Opportunity. I can't wait. I'm really pumped. Yeah. Like I've said many times, Trek Ranks is one that I feel like I have to be in the zone to listen to. I have to have my full attention. So I'm just waiting for the right opportunity to get caught up on that. So yeah, that's that. Well, thank you very much, Rob, for taking the time to jump on with us. Where can people find you?
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Where can you be found on social media?
So people can find me on Twitter. I'm at TrekkieRob. And they can also find my Trek Book Club that I run. So it's a book club all about Star Trek books, and that's on Twitter as well, at Trek Book Club. And yeah, I'm always happy to discuss anything related to Star Trek. So yeah, hit me up.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. What do we have in store next week, Dan? Do we know?
I don't think we know.
I don't think we know. We have to.
Still working on it.
Later time. Yeah. So stay tuned. We'll announce a topic for next week in the coming days. Stay tuned for episode rankings and cameo by Pete. Just now. There are going to be episode rankings. There are going to be Trekkie Awards. There are going to be MVP summaries from season 1 of Enterprise all rolling out in the next couple of days. So keep your eyes peeled, and I hope to hear everybody's feedback on all that stuff. Cool.
Yes, you guys know the drill. The discussion doesn't have to stop here. Come over to Twitter. Facebook and all that jazz. Everybody hype Rob up in the chat. He's the man for coming on.
Yes.
And thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Rob.
Bye.